In this complete MERN Stack project tutorial, we are going to build and deploy a fully functioning social media application using the MERN Stack. That is MongoDB, ExpressJS, ReactJS, NodeJS, and we are going to use Cloudinary for our file storage. We are going to use Socket.io as well for our real-time communication. That is going to be for our chat system, which is going to be included in this entire social media application. And finally, once we are done with the application, we are actually going to deploy it and make it available on the internet, and we are going to host it on Hostinga. So without wasting any time, let me actually walk you through the finished project. To use the application, of course, you have to be registered. So once any user comes to the website, you have to go to the sign up page to actually register. Okay, so let's register Daniel Vignon, okay, who is not in the system. So let's have Daniel at Gmail, come on, gmail.com. And if I try registering without filling in the passwords, I get filling all fields. And these error messages are actually coming from the backend. Okay, so we're actually going to create everything by ourselves. Okay, we are not going to use any authentication or authorization system or service like Clerk or anything like that. We are going to make sure we create everything by ourselves. Okay, so let's go ahead and add some password for Daniel. So I'm going to do Daniel123 for the password. And for the confirm password, Daniel123. Now, if I add 4 here, notice the passwords do not match. Okay, so if I try registering, I get passwords do not match. Okay, I can of course go ahead and show the passwords, and you can see that these two passwords do not match. Okay, so I'm going to remove the 4 here. And also, if I go ahead to change the email to a user who is already registered with this email, let's see what happens. Okay, I have achiever@gmail.com already registered. So if I try registering, I get email already exists, right? But I do not have daniel@gmail.com. So now, since we have valid info in all the fields, if I try registering, we are redirected to the sign-in page, meaning we were able to register an account. So let's go ahead and actually log in. Daniel@gmail.com, that's the email. And here too, of course, we have the check and making sure that we are not entering any empty fields. So let's add a password. And if I type a random password, of course, invalid credentials, right? And this is the password I just typed right here. So now Daniel123, that's the password we had for the sign up. So now I've been redirected to the main page or the home page, which means I have been able to actually sign in. All right, so here I can see that we have some suggested friends and all that, but let's go ahead and explore everything about the user first, and then we'll go on to actually create posts, message and bookmark and all that. Okay, so of course here in the profile page, this is the profile page. I have no following, I have no followers, and I can go ahead and actually have a bio. This is my bio, and I can actually go ahead and add an emoji here just for fun, and I can add something to the to the name, and I'm going to register or update rather. And you can see that Daniel Vignon has been updated. Okay, the bio here has been updated as well. Okay, now we can go ahead and actually follow some people. So I can go ahead and actually follow Sky Blue, and Sky Blue has been followed. I can actually click to go to the person's profile, and we have Agnes Asamoah. I can follow that person here, and we can actually unfollow as well if we want. We can message the person right here as well, but right now I just want to follow the person. Okay, we are going to explore the messaging system or the chat system as well later on, but yeah, that's it. Now let's go ahead and actually let me follow a couple of people as well. I'm going to follow Ernest Achiever, right? I'm going to follow Dinah Aye as well. Now back in the profile page, I can actually go ahead and update my profile picture. So I can just use anything for the profile picture, really. What can I really use here? I can use anything really. I'm going to use this guy as the profile. Actually, I'm going to use this person right here as the profile picture. So I'll just hit, and as you can see, that has been updated successfully. And so yeah, I think that's all for the profile page right now. Now let's go ahead and actually come back to the home page. Here we can, of course, we can be able to create posts, but first of all, let's go ahead and explore what we can do with others' posts. Of course, we can go ahead and like people's posts. Okay, so we have liked a post here, and we can actually go ahead and leave a comment. So we have a comment here, and since I'm the creator of the comments, I have this delete button here, and I can actually go ahead and delete this comment as well. Okay, so that has been deleted, and let's come back here. You can see we still have only the 3 comments. Right now, of course, I can bookmark some posts right here, and if I come to the bookmarks, you can see that this post has been bookmarked. Now I can unbookmark it or remove it from my bookmarks, and you can see it's been removed. Now if I come back, it is being removed from the bookmarks page as well. Now I can actually go ahead and search posts as well. Okay, so I can go ahead and search posts. I can search using the content. Okay, so I can just type anything. For instance, this post right here has foods in it. And so once I start typing, you can see that only this post shows up. Okay. And so there is a whole lot that you're going to learn in this project. Now let's go ahead and actually create, a post here. And I'll say, hi, I'm Daniel. And this is my first post. I'm going to choose an image for this post. I just use, what should I even use, man? Just use this orange, and I'll post, and we have our post. Okay, I can go ahead and like. You can see just 5-6 seconds ago, I can go ahead and actually leave a comment on my own post. This is my own comment on my own post. I can of course bookmark, and when I come to the bookmarks, I should have that. Okay, I can of course remove that from the bookmarks and actually remove the like as well, and as you can see, it is gone. Okay, there is no like. There is the comment, but there is no bookmark as well, or it is not being bookmarked. Okay, perfect. Okay, so let me actually go ahead and create another user so that we explore the the chat system as well. So I'm going to go ahead and register another user. I'm going to call this person BabyJet. So baby at Gmail, come on. So that will be 1 2 3 1 2 3. Let me make sure the passwords do match. And if you don't know BabyJet, that is a Samojan. And so yeah, he's been registered in the system, so we can go ahead and log in at gmail.com. 1 2 3, that's password, and boom, it's been logged in. Okay, so here we can actually follow a few people here as well. Right, I can follow an achiever as well here, and it's been followed. I can actually remove some of these as well. Okay, if I want, I can change the theme as well. The primary color, I can change it, and this is actually going to persist in the local storage. Okay, so whenever I come back to the website or to the application, this theme that I chose is going to persist. It's going to be the same theme that remains here. Okay, I can change to a blue primary theme. Of course, I can change the background as well. So now we have a dark theme throughout the application. Okay, so let's go ahead and actually change the, let's change the thumbnail, the profile picture for Samojan or BabyJet. And what even suits him here? I don't know, man. I think this guy looks like him, so let's choose that. And as you can see, we have the avatar or the profile picture for BabyJet. All right, now what else do I need to do here? I just want to make sure I am showing you everything. I mean, I'm not going to be able to show you everything, but at least the main things. Now here we can actually filter the following. Okay, so we can click this to see only the people that we are following their posts. Okay, the posts of the people we are following, and we can click this to fetch all posts on the or in the application. All right, now let's go ahead and actually create a post here, I think. Or would I be? I don't think that would be necessary. Okay, but yeah, I think that is it. Now let's see how the chat system also looks like. So I'm actually going to open another tab, and I'm going to log in as Daniel. Okay, I'm going to log in as Daniel at gmail.com. So Daniel 123, that was the password. We've been logged in, and BabyJet is here, so I'm going to follow BabyJet. And I can actually, you know what, let me go back to this, and I'm going to go ahead and go to Daniel's profile. I'm going to follow him. I do not have to follow him, but I'm just going to follow him. He has no followers, so I've given him a follower, and I'm going to message him. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and say, hi Daniel, and as you can see, we have hi Daniel. Okay, so I can tap this conversation and actually have some chat with BabyJet right here. So hi Jet, and if I go ahead and submit this and we check, you can see that we have hi Jet. Okay, so we can go ahead. Wait a minute, do I have? Okay, so this actually, okay, so there's Daniel who is chatting BabyJet, and there's BabyJet chatting Daniel. Okay, so yeah, so we can go ahead and actually send more stuff. We can add emojis and all that, and I'm going to send, and once I hit it, you can see that comes instantly. Okay, so I'm going to type any gibberish here just so we see that this actually works, and this by using socket.io. Okay, so this also comes instantly, right? And I'm going to type in more text here, and once I hit enter, boom, that is here. Okay, so this is what we are going to build in this project, and I hope you are ready to learn. Now I'm going to log in as Achiever. Of course, I can log in as anyone else, but I just want to log in as Achiever right now because I was done with the demo, but I just wanted to show you one more thing. Of course, we have the full crowd functionality for posts as well. Okay, so here, since I'm the creator of all these posts, now if I come to the home page, you can see that I do not have the option to actually click to be able to edit or delete any of the posts, right? But if I come to my profile, I have the option to click here to actually be able to delete or edit any of my posts, right? So I can click to edit this post, and I'll just say this post has been edited. Yep, so I can update it and it's been instantly updated. Okay, I can like my own post, of course. I can go ahead and add the comments as well. This is another comment from me. I can even add more and add emojis if I want. I also can go ahead and actually delete this post as well. So I can go ahead and delete it. Okay, now notice one more thing in the back end. Okay, so if I come to the project, let me show you something real quick. In the back end, you can see that we have an uploads folder, right? And in here, you can see we have some files, which are the images that we uploaded in this demo. Okay, now you are going to ask yourself, then how about the other images in the application? And these are actually coming from Cloudinary. Okay, every image in the application is coming from Cloudinary. Okay, and I'm going to show you how to work with Cloudinary. And the images here are first saved in here in the uploads folder before uploading them to Cloudinary. And from there, Cloudinary actually gives us a secure URL that we can use in our application. So I can actually go ahead and delete these, and our application is still going to work. So that is what I want to show you. And of course, the theme here, of course, I can go ahead and actually change it as well. Okay, and everything should be working perfectly. And also, one thing I want to show you is in here in the Mongoose database. This Mongoose MongoDB Atlas, sorry. And in here, you can see that everything we are doing is being stored here in the database. Okay, so we have our comments collection, conversations collection, messages collection, post collection, users collection, and all that, right? So you can see some of the comments that I just added. You can see we have the users that I just added, right? So everything, this baby jet, this Daniel Vignon, and if I come to Cloud, I have to log in. But basically everything is as I said, right? So I am ready to teach you everything that you see in this application. So if you're ready, just sit back, relax, and make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video. All right, let's get started.
Let's go ahead and set up our hosting and domain name. And having used or having worked with many hosting providers, the one that I always recommend for everyone is Hostinger. Now, in the description of this video, you are going to find a link that's probably the first link that's going to bring you to this page. And that's an affiliate link that's going to give you the best deal for your hosting purchase. Okay, so go ahead and then click that link. That's going to bring you to this page. And if you visit this page and the design is a little different, that's because it changes from time to time, right? So this Hostinger, let's go ahead and then check out some of the hosting web hosting packages that they have. And right here is their premium shared hosting. Okay, so for only $2.80 per month, you are going to have, or you are going to be able to host 100 websites. They give you 100 gigabytes of SSD storage, as you can see here. Free weekly backups. They give you free domain name. How cool is that? For most of the hosting providers, you actually buy the domain name separately. Okay, here they give you a free domain name and a free email as well. So they give you a bunch of other stuff that are very cool and very helpful as well. Right, so this is a perfect deal for me. I'm going to go ahead and then click add to carts. And as I said, make sure you use the link in the description to get the best deal on Hostinger. All right, so this is very affordable. So I'm going to go ahead and then use the 48 months. Okay, and that's going to give me the best deal. And right here, I'm going to go ahead and then enter my email. Right, so that's my email. I'm going to use PayPal. As you can see, my total is $133. Okay, now I have a coupon for you. Okay, and this is the best coupon on Hostinger. Go ahead and enter the coupon code EGATOR. Okay, this right here, enter that and apply and see what you get. You get 10% discount. So that is a very cool deal, and this is a very reliable hosting. That is why I went ahead and then got you this very important deal. All right, so we are going to go ahead and submit our secure payment. All right, so after the payment, make sure you check out your email to finish up everything, confirm your email and all that. And right here, I'm going to go ahead and then log in. So right here, I just logged in and I'm going to go ahead. As I said, they give you a free domain name, so you can go ahead and then claim the domain. Okay, which is really cool. On most platforms or with most hosting providers, you actually have to buy the domain name separately, which will cost you probably $10 or more, right? So the domain name I'm going to buy is dummy EGATOR, and I'm going to use the .com. Okay, so let me quickly check if that's actually available, and it is. Okay, so let's go ahead. As you can see here, that would cost me $14, but here they are giving it for me. They're giving it to me for free, which is really, really cool. Let's go ahead and then claim this domain name. Yeah, I forgot to mention, but they give us a free SSL as well. So let's go ahead and install that. Yep. And that's installing. And that's going to make sure every traffic on the website is secure. All right. So now let's proceed to work on the project.
And let's go ahead and create our project. I'm going to call this social media. So social-media. Let me correct this real quick. And I'll enter this folder. Of course, you can create this folder anywhere on your computer, right? You can create it on your desktop if you want. Now we are going to have the client side and the server side, basically the front end and the back end, okay? And we are going to start with the server side, but let me have those two folders down. I'm going to have the client folder and the server folder. I'm going to open this social media folder. That's the main project folder. I'm going to open that in VS Code. VS Code is the text editor I'm going to use. And as I said, we are going to start with the server side or the backend. And so that's what I'm going to do. Now for the terminal, I'm going to use get bash here. And so let me remove that PowerShell. I don't like PowerShell. So let's cd into the server. That's the server folder. And we are going to do npm init-y to have our package.json file, and we have it. Okay, all right, now let's go ahead and have a simple server. And so I'm going to have, my index.js file. Of course, we need some dependencies, so let's go ahead and install those. And we are going to need production dependencies and some development dependencies as well. Let's go ahead and install the main dependencies first. And so let's go ahead and install, that's npm install. I'm going to have bcrypt.js. That's going to be for our hashing of the password. We are going to need Cloudinary for the file upload. We are going to need course, for our front end, basically to have permission for our front end to connect to this server that we are creating or the backend that we are creating. We need .env just to secure some credentials. We need Express, of course. There's an Express backend that we are creating or an Express API that we are creating. We need Express file upload, which is going to help us with file upload. You can use Mortar if you want. We are going to use JSON Web Token. That's going to help us with authentication as well. We need Mongoose, that's MongoDB, database connection. We need socket IO, which is going to be used when we get to the chat system, and we need UUID as well. Okay, so these are the production or the main dependencies that we need. And I'm going to hit enter for these to install. And if I check here, we should have our dependencies array. Of course, we have our node modules here, as you can see, and we have the dependencies here all installed. Perfect. Let me make sure that's big enough for you to see, right? Now let's go ahead and actually install the dev dependency, and it's only one, that's NodeMon, which is going to help us. Basically it's going to keep our server running. Okay, so npm install -d NodeMon. So if the text was too small early on, these are the dependencies that I mentioned for the production. Okay, so these are the main dependencies, right? And this is the dev dependency that we just installed. All right, so that is it. Now let's go on and have a simple server. Now I'm going to have the server soon, but let's go ahead and actually have get ignore. Okay, I'm going to push this to GitHub. So .get ignore, and I'm going to have .env file and the node modules folder here. Okay, I don't want these two to be pushed to GitHub. Okay, .env file is going to have some credentials which I don't want people to see, and also the node modules have just the dependencies which does not need to be pushed to GitHub. I hope that makes sense. All right, so these two should be in your node your get ignore file here. All right, so here in the index.js, let's have our server. So let's import the things that we just or the packages or the dependencies that we just installed. I'm going to bring in Express. So let's require Express. I'm going to require connect from MongoDB. From Mongoose. And for .env, I'm actually going to just require it straight and just have the config method on it. I'm going to bring in course, so course, and let's require that. I'm going to bring in the express file upload. Okay, who is going to help us with the file upload? I'm going to call this upload and say require express file upload. So let's say app should be equal to express, and then we execute that. Okay, we instantiate that. Now we can say app.use, and for our request we are going to be expecting some URL encoded data. Okay, so let's say express.url encoded, and we are going to say extended should be true. I'm going to duplicate this, and the next one is going to be JSON, and extended is going to be true for that as well. Now let's have our course. So app.use course, and here we can say credentials should be true, and origin, the origin, I'm going to make that an array, and this should actually be HTTP localhost. We are going to use vit, and so the port is 5173. And once we deploy, we are actually going to add the URL or the domain for the deployed client or the deployed front end in here as well in the array. I hope that makes sense. The last thing we need here is app.use upload, which is the express file upload. So now let's go ahead and actually start our server. Okay, so we can do app.listen, and then we pass in a port. Okay, so this port we can actually have that in a .env file. So I'll say port should be equal to 5000, right? And I'm going to have that in here. So process.env.port, okay, and I'm going to have a function here that will log something in the console just for us to know that the server is truly running. So I'll say server started on port. You know what, I'll make this a template literal, that's a backtick, and say server started on port, and then I'll say process.env.port. Okay, so now we can go ahead and start this server and see what happens. I'm going to clear this terminal, and since we have NodeMon, let's come back in here, and I'm going to have a script here that's going to be a dev, and that will be NodeMon index.js. Okay, so let's do npm run dev, and we should have server started on port undefined. Okay, what could be the problem? .env. Okay, it is undefined because this .env should be in the server folder. Okay, I probably should have opened only the server folder in the code, in the VS Code, right? But let me just cancel this using Control C and then do npm run dev again. And now this should actually work. Server running or server started on port 5000. I hope that makes sense. All right, so now the next thing I want to do is to actually connect to the database, and then from there we are going to have our controller folder, our models folder, and all that. Okay, so let's actually go ahead and register an account on MongoDB Atlas. I have an account, so I'm just going to go ahead and sign in. But if you don't have an account, you can go ahead and get started. Okay, you can go ahead and create your own account. So I'm going to sign in here, and we are here now. I'm going to actually create a new project. So just add new project here, and I'm going to call this social media. And for tags and all that, I don't need that. And for the members, I'm just going to ignore that and then create project. I'm going to teach you how to actually have the database access and the network access. Okay, now let's create the cluster. Go ahead and create cluster. We are going to call this social media cluster. My typing is so bad today. I don't know. You can choose any area that is closest to your users or that is closest to you. I'm just going to leave it at, no, actually, let me just choose somewhere else. Okay, Cape Town. And what else do I need here? Of course, I'm going to choose free. Okay, and yeah, that's it. I'm going to create the cluster, create deployment right here, and this will probably take a minute. So username, password, connect to. Now for the database user, I just want to show you so that in case you missed it, you know how to do it. Okay, I want to show that separately. Now to create a database user, you have to come here to database access and create a new database user. Okay, so you can add the name and the password. So username, I'm going to do Achiever, and for the password I'll do, for the password I'll generate that and I'll copy that to my code here. For now, I'm actually going to have that in the link, okay, the URL that we are going to get in a minute. Yeah, so, and user description, I don't need to add that, and the role, read and write, and what else do I need here? I think that's it. Okay, so that is it. Actually, you can add or restrict access. Okay, so here I'm going to restrict access to the social media cluster. Okay, and that's it. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead. You can set this person as a temporary user, but I don't need that. And so let's go ahead and actually add this user, that is Achiever. Okay, let's go ahead and add this user, and the user has been added. Okay, now for the network access, you come here and I'm going to delete this, which is my IP address. Of course, that shouldn't show. I just deleted my IP address, and so I'm going to add a new IP address. And if you want, for testing, you can allow access from anywhere. Okay, and just confirm that. Right, so that is all you need to do for the database access and the network access. All right, so once that is all done, you can come back to your clusters right here and hit connect. Okay, you can click connect right here and click drivers, and this link right here is what we are going to use to connect to our MongoDB database. Okay, so copy that link and then come here to your .env and give this a name. I'm going to call it Mongo URL and just paste the link you just copied. Okay, now the user is achiever, of course, and the password here should be the password for that user that you created. Okay, the database access user that you created. Okay, so make sure you paste that for the password. And lastly, right after this slash, this // you should have your database name. All right, so I'm going to call this social media tut, basically social media tutorials, right? And so that is going to be my database name. And once we have our models, this is actually going to show here in our collections. Okay, so once we come here, we will see that we have our database here, and then we have all the collections that we are going to create very soon, right? So let's go ahead and actually work on the other folders that we need, and we will have our models quickly. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. And since I edited the .env, I should restart the server. And of course, let's actually come back to the index.js. And here I want to connect to my database first before I actually start the server. Okay, so I'll say connect, which is coming from Mongoose, as you can see here. Connect is coming from Mongoose. And I'll pass in the URL. That's the URL we have in the .env. That is Mongo URL. I'll pass that in. And once we connect to our database, then we are going to start our server. Okay, so I'll just copy everything from here, app.listen and what. I'll just copy all that. And so if we have any issues, we just get the error and then log that in the console. I hope that makes sense. So we connect to our database, and once our database is connected successfully, then we actually start our server. In case we get any errors connecting to the database, then we catch whatever error we get. I hope that makes sense. So now I'm going to do npm run dev again. And if we connect successfully, and we have connected successfully, that is why we have server started on port 5000. If I go ahead and actually edit anything here, for instance the password right here, or even the user. Okay, so if I remove the I from here and restart the server, I'm going to close it and restart it again, npm run dev, we should have, yeah, exactly, we should have an issue. Okay, so as you can see, authentication failed right here. Okay, so we weren't able to connect. I hope that makes sense. All right, so I'm going to, of course, correct that, and npm run dev, and everything should be perfect. Okay, now we do not have any errors. All right, so now let's go ahead and actually create the other folders that we need. And to prevent any other errors, just like we had for the .env file, which landed in the main social media folder, I'm going to close this entire thing and then open the server folder alone. Okay. All right, so now let's go ahead and create the other folders that we need. We need controllers folder. We need models folder. Come on. The models folder is not going to be in the controllers. Okay, it's going to be in the server. I hope that makes sense. So we need models folder. We need the routes folder. We need uploads folder. That's where the uploaded files are going to be. We need middleware. We are going to have auth middleware, error middleware, and all that. So that's going to be in there. We need utils folder. And lastly, we need socket. Okay, which is going to be for the socket.io, right? Now let's go into models folder and have some models here. We are going to have the user model, which is the first model we are going to work with. So user model.js. We are going to have the post model. which is going to be the second model. We are going to have, the comments model or comment model.js. We are going to have error model.js. Okay. Now let me quickly work on the error model real quick. I'll have a class here. I'll name that HTTP error, and I'll extend the error class, and I'll say constructor, which will take in a message and an error code. I'll say super and then pass in the message, and then this code should be equal to error code. Okay, now I'm going to export that. So module export HTTP error. Perfect. Okay, so now let's go into our middleware and have an error middleware as well. During the demo, you could see some errors. Whenever we had any invalid stuff in the form, you could see some errors at the top of the form. And those errors were coming from here. That's the backend, right? So I just want to handle these errors. Whatever error that is coming from the backend, I just want to handle them very well and then present them well in the front end, or send them like well presented to the front end. I hope that makes sense. So yeah, for the middleware and the model that I have here, I'm just trying to handle my errors. Okay, I'm just trying to have some middleware and a model to handle my errors. I hope that makes sense. And I'm actually going to have or not found middleware as well. Actually, let me have the not found or unsupported endpoint middleware here first before we actually have the error middleware. So I'll say unsupported endpoints. Okay, so that will be not found, request, response, next, and I'll say error, new error, and we'll say not found, and then we have request original URL. Okay, I just want to have the URL that we are trying to, or the user is trying to get. Okay, I just want to have that in the error message, and the status is going to be 404, which is not found. Of course, equal to, and we'll pass that to the next middleware or whatever next controller that we have. Now let's have the error middleware. So I'll say error handler should be equal to, we get the error, request, response, and then next. Now since we have 4 parameters, the first one becomes the error parameter or the error argument. So here I'm going to check if we've already sent a response. Okay, so if response header sent, if so, then I'll say return next error. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and say response status should be error code, or which is basically server error, and then the JSON message will be the error message, or if there is no message, I'll just say an unknown error occurred. And of course, I have to export these two middlewares, so they're not found and the error handler. Okay, and with that, let's come back into our index.js, and that is where we are going to have these two. And right before we start our server, app.use not found, error handler. Okay, and make sure you actually import that. Perfect. So that is done. We have our error handlers and our not found, middleware. And so we are good to go. Now, I want to have our routes. Of course, we are not going to have all the routes instantly. We are going to start working on the users. Okay, we should be able to register a user, log in a user, get users and all that. Okay, so let's start with the user models. Okay, but first, you know what, let's just go ahead and have the user model, right? So what do we need to create a user? Well, first let's have a schema. Okay, so I'm actually going to, let me bring this to the top. I'm going to bring in schema and model from, so let's require mongoose. So schema and model should be coming from mongoose. Now let's have our user schema. So new schema, and of course this takes in an object, and let's have a full name. We need a full name to register a user, and the type is going to be string. Of course it's going to be required, so required true. We need email, a type of string, and it's going to be required, so required true. We need a password, of course, and that is going to be a type of string and required as well. And what else? We need a profile picture or profile photo. It's going to be a type of string, because once we upload to Cloudinary, they are going to give us a secure URL, which is a string basically, right? So there's going to be a string, and the default. Now, to have a default, once we register any user, okay, if you can remember from the demo, once we register any user, you saw, let me show you quickly. I'm not going to show you from the demo, but user with image or user icon, and you saw something like this, right? So you can come here, grab this image. I don't know whether it's copyrighted or not. You can grab it, and then you create a Cloudinary account, right? Once you have a Cloudinary account, you can go ahead and actually upload that image. I'm going to log in here. So here you come to media files, right? And you just upload that. Basically, you just click upload and then upload that image, okay? And you copy the URL of that image. So you just click share and then public URL or whatever. You are going to find the URL. So once you copy that, you use that as the default, okay? Use that as the default. Now, I actually have that. I don't know where that is, but let me quickly find it. I'm going to show all the images, and I have a lot of images because I was doing a lot of, testing during the creation of the application, right? So, oh boy, this is going to take a while. Wait a minute, what? Okay, yeah, here it is. Okay, so right here, I have it uploaded. I'm going to click this copy URL, and then instead of using that image that I copied from Google, I'm actually going to use this, okay, as a default. Okay, so once a user registers, this is going to be his or her profile photo or his profile image. Okay, now we are going to have bio, and the type is going to be string, of course, and you can have a default for this as well. So default, let's say no bio yet, right? Let's have followers. Okay, every user is going to have some followers, which is going to be an array, and the type is going to be, actually is going to be schema dot types dot object ID, okay, which is a mongoose or a MongoDB ID, and we are going to refer that to the user. Okay, now we are going to have following as well, which is going to be basically the same as what we have up top. So I'll just duplicate this. So that will be following, which is the same thing. and we are going to have bookmarks. Every user is going to have some bookmarks, which is going to refer to the post model, which we don't have yet. So that's going to be an array of IDs as well, MongoDB IDs. I hope that makes sense. And lastly, we are going to have posts. Okay, so every user is going to have some posts, which is going to be an array of MongoDB IDs or MongoDB object IDs, which are going to refer to the post model. Right now, once you have all that, of course, I'm going to say timestamp should be true in case we need it. Now let's have the model. That's the schema we just had. So let's create the model. So module exports, and we are going to say model should be user. And whatever you have here, MongoDB is smart enough to pluralize it, right? So just have a singular version and have the schema in here. I hope that makes sense. So that is all for our user model. And I think we can go ahead to actually have the routes and the controllers that we need. Now let's get into our routes, okay? But before we do that, actually let's have the controllers first. Let's have our user controllers.js, and I'm going to make sure I comment the code, okay, well for you guys, right? So I'm going to have user register user controller, and it's going to be a post request, and the URL is going to be api/users/register, and it's going to be unprotected, right? So let's have the controller register user, and this is going to be asynchronous. Okay, we are communicating with the database. We are going to have a try catch here, and of course, since we have our error model, we can bring that in. So let's import http error, which should be coming from I think that would be the middle. Actually, that's the model. Okay, so let's go into our models and error model. Okay, so this error model, that's a class. Where is it? This right here. And for every error that we want to handle, remember we need to pass in a message, an error message and an error code, right? Perfect. So basically here, in case we have any error here, then we are going to return next and new http error, which needs an error message and an error code. But here I'm just going to pass in the error that we get from the catch. So for the try, for now I'll just say response.json. Of course we need request response and then next. So here for the response I'll say register user. So that is for our register user controller. Now I'm going to go ahead and actually duplicate this for the remaining controllers that we need. We need login user controller, and this is going to be login. It's going to be a post request as well, unprotected, because you don't need to protect a login page. And what do we need? Say login user, and everything should remain the same here. Now of course for the comment, it should be login user. Now here we'll have get user. We should be able to get a user. For example, on the profile page we should be able to get any user, right? This is going to be a get request as well, as you can see, and we need the ID of the user to be able to get that user. Now this is actually going to be protected. Okay, you say get user, and get user, right? I think that's it. Now let's move on to the next one, which will be get users. Okay, plural. Get users. There's going to be a protected route as well. The request is going to be get, and here we don't need anything here. Okay, so API/users should be able to get all the users, right? And get users, plural. What else? We want to be able to edit a user. Okay, for instance, the name of the user and the bio of the user, just like we saw in the demo. So this should be get users. Perfect. So this should be edit user. It's going to be protected as well. Get request. Oh, sorry, patch request. Okay, we are editing. And so users, and then we have the ID of the user. Actually, we just go to edit, right? Because the logged in user is the only person that can edit himself. I hope that makes sense. And you're going to understand that more once we start working on the controller itself. So yeah, edit user. You see edit user. Models. Yep, that's it. And lastly, we want to be able to actually, there's not the last thing. I'll copy, paste, and then paste. Okay, so we want to be able to follow or unfollow a user. Okay, so I'll say follow, unfollow user. So follow, unfollow user. This will be a patch request as well. I think, I'm not sure, but let's see, we'll see what happens. It could be a get request. Okay, so users, we need the ID of the person we are trying to follow or unfollow, and then /follow, unfollow. Right, it's going to be protected, of course, and say follow, unfollow user, edit user. Yep. So the next one is going to be change profile picture. Okay, so change avatar. So you say change user profile photo, and that is going to be a patch request as well. And here we say avatar. Okay, because you alone, you the logged in user, is going to be able to change your own avatar. Now the reason why I don't have the ID in here is because I'm going to have an authentication middleware, okay, which is going to have the logged in user ID. Okay, so with that we can actually get the user from the database and then update or change the profile photo. I hope that makes sense. You're going to understand that later, so let's just move on. Change user avatar, that's how I'm going to call this. Change user avatar. I hope that makes sense, right? So yeah, I think that's it. Now, of course, let's go ahead and export all these. So module exports, and this should be an object, of course. Register user, login user, get user. Wait a minute. Get user, get users. What else? Edit user, follow, unfollow user, and then change avatar or change user avatar. Yeah, that's it. Right, so these are all the controllers that we need for a user, right? And so I'm going to come into my routes folder right here, and I'm going to create the route. You can split this into multiple routes where you have the user routes, the post routes, the comments routes, and all that, but I'm going to have them all in one file, right? So routes.js, and I'm going to just import the stuff that we have from the user controller. So let's go into our controllers and then the user controller. Okay, let's get all that from the file. Before we have the endpoints or the routes for the users, of course we have to bring in router from Express. So let's say require Express, and then we get the router and instantiate that. Okay, so we can have our routes for the users. Let me have a comment here, user route, and let's have the register route first. Of course, we have to be able to register a user before we can do anything, and that will be /users/register. Okay, now you may ask, where is the API? Because if you look at the controller, I commented that the route is going to be API right here, API users, and then register. Okay, and actually we are going to have that in the index.js. Okay, so let's come back into the index.js here, and right here we are going to say app.use, and any path or any route that starts with /API, we say get us to the route file. Okay, the routes file that we have in here, right? So we need to bring in that file. So let's require the routes from routes. Wait a minute. Yeah, routes, and then get the routes.js file. I hope that makes sense. So anything that starts with /API is going to land us in the routes file, right? So let's go ahead and continue here in the routes. And for this path, we need the register user controller. Okay, and I'm going to duplicate this. That will be for the login. That's the next one. So login user, that will be the controller. We need get user, which is going to be a get request. Remember that. Okay, and for that we need the ID of the user. Okay, so get user. We need what? We need to be able to get all the users as well. So that would be get users, right? That's the route for that. We need to be able to edit a user. So that'll have the ID. But now the method is going to be a patch request. Okay. That will be edit user. What else? We should be able to follow or unfollow a user, and this should actually be a get request. Okay, so I'll come back here, and for the follow unfollow, I'll make this a get, right? So let's come back here. I'm actually going to close the index. So this is going to be a get for the follow unfollow user, and let me duplicate that, and this next one will be the change avatar, or yeah, change avatar or change user avatar. Okay, yeah, avatar. Right, now for the follow unfollow, yeah, we do need the ID, and then we say follow unfollow. Perfect. Right, so this should actually be a post request. I don't know if I did that here as well. Oh, this should be post. Right, so these are the routes that we need for our user. Now we will be having two more routes, and those will be for the get user posts, right? Remember, when you get to, or when you enter anybody's profile, you see the person's posts. So we'll have that, but that will be after we have some posts, or we have the post model. And then the last one, or the last routes that we have for our users, will be the bookmark. Okay, the get bookmarks route. But we are going to have that later on, once we work on the post controller and the post basically once we have the post model. All right, so we have our endpoints here. Now we have to make sure these actually work. That means for each of these, routes, we have to make sure the controller responds to them. And to test this out, we are going to use Postman. And of course, we should make sure we are exporting this. Okay, so module.export the router here. Right now, that is because we're actually getting it here in the index. So of course, since we are getting it here, we have to be exporting it from here. All right, so now everything should be working. When we check, we should have our server running here. Perfect. Now, of course, as I said, we are going to use Postman to test our routes or our endpoints. So go ahead and download Postman. And you can just click the first link you see. And once you have that, you can open the Postman. And let's just go ahead and try this. So for instance, for the register route or for the register endpoint, that is HTTP localhost. The port is 5000. Remember, our server is running on port 5000, and we have to go /API, okay, which is from the index page routes. That's where the route starts. Okay, so /API, and then we continue from here. I hope that makes sense. So /API/users/register should get us the register endpoints. Okay, so basically we should get a response from the register controller. So when we send this, we should get register user, which is coming from the register controller right here. Okay, right here, right? So we have the post request and everything is working perfectly. Now, if I change this to be a GET request, this shouldn't work. We should have an error. Okay, so the GET request is getting us GET user, and the reason is because it is treating this register text or this string that we have here. It is treating that as an ID. Okay, so that is why we are getting that. But basically, this works. Okay, so I'm actually going to make sure I present this very well and make it easy as we work along. So I'm going to go ahead and create a collection here. And I'm going to call this social media. Okay, that's the collection. And what do I need? I'm going to go ahead and create the routes. I need my register route, of course. All the parts up to the API, I'm going to cut that out, okay, and then have that in an environment variable. Okay, so let's create an environment here and give that I'll say social media env, right? Social media environment variables, and I'll call this root URL. Okay, root underscore URL, and I'm going to paste what I just cut from the route. Okay, so HTTP localhost 5000 API, and I'm going to paste this in here as well, and I'm actually going to save it and then make sure to set it as the active environment. Okay, so instead of always having HTTP localhost blah blah blah, you can come here and then have root URL, and then you have your /users/ whatever you have. All right, so here if I go ahead and actually hit this, I should get the register user. I hope that makes sense. And also we can go ahead and actually save this. So whenever we want to register a user, we can just come and then hit that. Okay, so let me show you real quick. So let's select the collection and give this a name. I'll say register user and then save it. Okay, so we have that. Now I'm going to close this environment and I'll open this new one. That's a new request, and that will be the root URL /users users/login, and that's a post request, of course, and we should get login user. I can go ahead and actually save that as well as a different request. So I'll say login user, and I'll save that. Now if I open this collection, you should see two requests that are saved. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and have the rest. We have get user, that will be the root URL, and then users/id. So whatever ID that we have should get us to the get user. Let's save that as well. I'm going to go ahead and get all users. So /users should get all the users. Of course, I should send it just so you see it, or just so we make sure it is working. Get all users. We have that. Now we have what? Edit user, which is a patch request. So the URL, users, the ID of the user, so basically anything, and edit. I think that's it. I'm not sure. Let's see. So for edit, wait a minute, where is edit? Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's edit. So I'll send a request and not found. And remember, this is coming from the 404, the not found error middleware. Okay, so this is how it is presenting the error. Okay, since this endpoint doesn't exist, this is how it is being presented. So this last part, that's the edit, doesn't need to be there. So we send this, and now we get edit user. So let's save that and say edit user. And I think we have two more to go. That will be the follow unfollow. So follow, so users slash, wait a minute, let me confirm that. User slash follow unfollow, right? So the ID of the user, and then follow dash unfollow, which should be a get request. So let's see what happens. We get follow or unfollow user. We should of course save that as well. Say follow or unfollow user. What else? And last one is change avatar, change user avatar. Okay, so with that, we actually just need to, I think that's a get request. Okay, that's actually a post request. So change avatar, a post request. We get the root URL, users, and we say avatar, right? Hit it, change user avatar, perfect. And we say change user avatar or change user profile, whatever. So that is it, guys. This means that all the endpoints that we have are working perfectly. All the endpoints are working good. And now we can go ahead to actually work on the individual controllers. So let's get into the user controller. And of course, we should bring in the model, the user model. So user model, let's require that from the models and the user model. What do we need to register a user? Well, we need a full name. We should be expecting a full name coming from the request body, right? We need an email, we need password, we need confirm password as well, and that's it. So now let's go ahead and check if any of these are empty. So if not full name, an empty string is false, right? So if we don't have that, and if you don't have the email or the password or the confirm password, then we are going to return an error. So return next new HTTP error. and we'll pass in our own message, and we shall fill in all fields, and the error will be 422, basically invalid, input. Okay, invalid input from the client. I hope that makes sense. All right, now if everything was filled, then we can go ahead and actually make email lowercase, right? And the reason is some people just type without even having the caps lock off. Okay, so some people also just mix lowercase with uppercase. Okay, and we don't want to register someone whose name, for instance, or whose email, for instance, starts with an uppercase E, and then someone else is going to be registered with the same email just because his is going to start with a lowercase a, right? So every email that we are getting is going to be lowercase, right? So that's what we are going to do here. So const lowercase email, and I can't type today, so forgive me for that. So I'll say to lowercase, right? So I get the email that we are getting from the request, and we change it to be lowercase. Now let's go ahead and actually check the database to see if this person whose email we just got actually exists. So check db if email exists, right? So basically if user exists, right? So we are going to say email exists is going to be await. Of course, that is why we have a sync here. There's a synchronous, and so we get the user model, and we are going to find one. We are going to find anyone with the email that we have. Okay, and of course passing the lowercase email. Now let's go ahead and check if the email exists. If so, then this user already exists. Okay, so if the email exists, then we are going to return an error, meaning we cannot register a user who is already registered. I hope that makes sense. So we say email already exists, and we say 422, meaning you passed in a wrong data, okay, or wrong credentials, right? So, or invalid data basically. So now once we have that, let's go ahead and check if password and confirm password matches or match. So if password doesn't match confirm password, then we have a problem. And what problem is that? We just need to return an error for the user to see for himself. Okay, and we will say passwords do not match, and we send the same status, the same error status. And once we check that and the passwords do match, then we are going to check the length of the password. So check password length. So we want it to be beyond a certain length or certain number of characters. So if the password the length is less than 6 characters, then we are going to return an error, new HTTP error, and you say password should be at least 6 characters. 422 invalid data. Now if the password is long enough, then we can go ahead and hash it. Okay, so if everything is perfect, then we can go ahead and hash the password, right? So let's hash the password, and we are going to use bcrypt for that. So let's go ahead and bring in bcrypt. I'll say bcrypt, and let's require bcrypt.js. And if you can remember, we installed that during the beginning of the project, right? So let's have a sort first. A sort is basically how you hash it. Okay, so bcrypt.gen sort, or how difficult it is. We generate the sort and then now we hash the password. So I'll say hashed password should be equal to await and then bcrypt.hash, and then we pass in the password and the salt. And now, since everything is perfect, we can go ahead and add user to database. And now once everything is perfect, we can go ahead and add user to database, right? So you say new user should be equal to await user model dot create, and then we get the full name. Email is going to be the lowercase email. The password is going to be the hashed password, and that's it. Okay, and once that is done, we can send something to the client. So new user, and I'm going to add a status of 201, meaning a new resource has been created. I hope that makes sense. All right, so let's go ahead and actually try this out. Let's go ahead and register a user. So I'll just click register user. I'll come to body right here and I'll choose this URL encoded. Okay, so to register, of course, if I try sending, I should have an error. Okay, full name undefined. That's not how it should be, right? The error should be handled more wisely, basically. So new HTTP error. What is going on? Okay, cannot extract a property full name. Okay, that makes sense. So basically we are getting a server error. Okay, this error that we are getting is coming from here, right? But let's go ahead and have full name. We need email, we need password, and then confirm password. Okay, and now if I send, I get the real, the real error that I am passing, as you can see here. I hope that makes sense. So for the full name, let's see. And if we check the database, let me come here and then refresh it so that you see what's happening in here. We should have the model, of course. We should have the database and the collection, the user collection. Yeah, exactly. So we have the social media toot, which is the database name that we passed to the link. If you can remember the link that we grabbed, we named the database social media toot, right? And then we have users as the collection, which is named after the model name. I hope that makes sense. That's the user model right here. They pluralized it. Okay, so this right here is the name of the collection. All right, so let's go ahead and actually register a user. And as you can see, of course, there is no user. Okay, there's no user in this collection, in this user collection. So let's go ahead and register a user, John. Nah, I'm not going to register John. I'm the creator of the app. I have to register myself first. So I'll do achiever@gmail.com and achiever123. If I try to send again, I should get filling off. Okay, passwords do not match. Cool. Achiever1234. I should get the same thing. Passwords do not match. Wait a minute. How? All right, so maybe I have a problem here. I have an error. If it is less, okay, confirm password, right? I'll send this again. Filling all fields, really? confirm password. Oh, if not, right? If you don't get it, then I hope that makes sense. So let's hit it one more time. Passwords do not match. That actually makes sense. Okay, so now everything is perfect. Okay, we have long enough, but of course, let me test the length of the password as well. So if the passwords do match, but they are less than 6 characters, we get password should be at least 6 characters. I hope that makes sense. So every check is working. We are making sure our users are entering valid inputs, okay, or valid data. So let's go ahead, since everything is perfect here, let's go ahead and hit it, and this time everything should work and we should be registered. And as you can see, the user has been registered. We have an Achiever as the full name, achiever@gmail.com as the email, and this is the the image, okay, the image as the default profile photo, right? We have the followers, the bio, and all that. So everything is working exactly as expected. And so let's go ahead and continue to the login. I don't want to waste too much time. All right, so to log in a user, we need an email and a password, right? So let's get that from the request body. We need an email and a password. It should be coming from the request body. Of course, we have to check if any of those were empty. If so, then we are going to return new HTTP error, and we say fill in all fields 4 to 2, and then we will make here too. Of course, we have to make the email lowercased. Okay, so lowercased email should be equal to email that we got, then change it to lowercase. Simple as that. And we have to fetch the user from the DB, right? So user should be equal to await user model dot find one, and we are going to find by email. Okay, lowercase the email. Now I want to check if we actually got a user, and if we did not, then we are going to return next new HTTP error and say invalid credentials. Okay, basically the email doesn't exist in our system, and that'll be 422 invalid data passed in, or invalid data from the client. Okay, now I want to actually destructure the password and rest the other information coming from the user. Okay, so I'll say user info, right? I'll say user password. Okay, and that should be coming from the user that we just got from the database, right? That's if we have any. Okay, if we have any, then we passed this check and we are moving on. So now let's compare the password. Okay, so we are going to compare the password that the user typed in the field to the password in the database. Okay, coming from the user right here. So let's compare that, and I'll say compared pass should be equal to await bcrypt, and they have a method of compare. So password, and then we pass in the user password, which is the encrypted password. And if it doesn't match, then we have a and if that doesn't match, then that means the password that was entered in the field is incorrect. Okay, so we will turn a new HTTP error and say invalid credentials. Okay, we don't have to say invalid password, else they will know the email is there, but they just have to play around with the password. I hope that makes sense. So once we have that down, then the user is actually valid. Okay, that's actually the user for that email, or the um or the right user logging in. So we are going to create a token for this user and then send it to the client, right? So we say JWT, which we don't have, so I have to bring that in. So const JWT, that's JSON Web Token, and I don't think we even have that installed. So I have to maybe I should just have a new bash. So npm install JSON Web Token. Perfect, that was quick. So require JSON Web Token, right? And we are going to sign using the payload is going to be the ID. Okay, so ID will be the user underscore ID, and the secret is going to be inside the .env. So I'll have a JWT secret here, which can be any gibberish, right? That's enough. I'm not creating a bank here. So process .env .jwt underscore secret, and of course, since we've altered the .env, I have to restart the server, but give me a minute. And I think the last thing is the options, and that will be expires in, and that will be 1 hour, so 1h, right? And that will give us a token, and this is what we are going to send to the client. So response.json is going to be, of course, the status is going to be 200, which is success or successful. And I'm going to have an object with a token, the ID, which is the user ID, right? And user underscore ID rather. And I'll spread the user info. Okay, so that is it, and this is what I'm sending to the client, right? So let's go ahead and actually test this out in Postman. So you just click login user, come here, and URL encoded. We need an email and a password. The email, so far we have only one registered user with the email achiever@gmail.com. And of course, if I try sending, we should have filling all fields. And if I enter a password that doesn't match, I get invalid credentials. But then if I have achiever123, then everything works. Okay, and we have this, right? Of course, if you want, you can go ahead and clean up everything in here to make it look better, but I'm just going to leave it like this. We don't have time, so let's just move on and get a user. Let me have enough space between these controllers, man. They're too tight. Let me have enough space so that when you're looking at the code, you don't get dizzy. All right, so let's get user. And by the way, let me show you quickly. You can see that we are getting the token. Okay, so right here we have the token, and then the next thing we have in the object is this, which is the ID of that user, and then we have this gibberish, which is coming from what ID structured. Wait a minute, I'm actually getting the user the password as well. I don't think I need to pass in this user info. Okay, I don't think I need this, honestly. So you know what, let me duplicate this. This is what I have so far, but I don't want to completely get rid of it. So I'm just going to remove it. And right here, where did we, yeah, right here, we don't need this as well, the U password. Yeah, so I'll just leave it like this. So now once we sign in, this should be a lot more simpler. So we just have the token and the ID. Okay, so now if you actually copy this token and then come to JWT, the website, and then you pass that in, you can see, so you can see the ID right here, which is really the ID of the user. I hope that makes sense. All right, so that's it. In case later on I have to come back and then uncomment this, I'll do so, but for now I think we are good. Let's move on to actually get a user. And to do that, we need the user's ID, okay, which should be coming from the request parameters or the request params, right? So we get an ID, which should be coming from the request params, and that will be const user await user model. We are just going to find that user from the database. So find by ID, and then we pass in the ID, okay. And once we get the user, we are just going to send the user back to the client. You can add a status of 200, or you can even go ahead and see if you did not get a user. If so, then you're going to return next new HTTP error and say user not found or something like that. That's if you want to. Let's do 422 or something. And I think that's it. Okay, so let's go ahead and try getting a user. This user doesn't exist because we don't have this in the database, and so we should have wait a minute, right? So basically we are getting an error, okay, because there's not even a MongoDB ID, right? So the user does not exist. But then if you go ahead and you get an ID, so far we have only one user, so let's get that user's ID and then pass that in, and now we should be able to get that user. Okay, so we have an achiever. Now let's move on to get all users, which should be very, very simple. We just have to await user model and then find. So you know what, I'm going to go ahead and register a few more users. I'm going to register Jane Doe. The email will be jane@gmail.com. Jane123 will be the password. Jane123. We've tested everything, so I'm not going to waste time playing around. And we have Jane Doe registered, right? And if I go ahead and get all the users, oh, I'm not sending any response, right? The response.json should be the users that we got from the database. I'll send, and now we have two users. We have Jane Doe and a Nest Achiever. Perfect. Now, of course, you can go ahead and limit. Actually, that's what I want to do, because in the demo, you can see on the right side of the homepage, we had some suggested friends, right? That's where I want to show these users. So I want to limit it to only 10, users that we get. And I'm actually going to sort it as well using the created at, and I want it ascending, right? So that is it. So if we had 1 billion users, we are only going to get the first 10. I hope that makes sense. That's it. Now let's go on to the next thing, that is edit user. We don't want to edit everything, when it comes to the user. Okay, we only want to edit the name of the user and the bio. That's all we want to edit, right? So we want to get the full name and the bio from the request body. And once we have that, we are going to go ahead and edit user, or I'll say edited user. Okay, we are going to perform some operation in the the database. So I'll say find by ID and update, and I'll get the request user ID. Now this here is going to come from the Auth Middleware, the authentication middleware, which I'm going to create in a minute, just so we have everything in place. And so let's go ahead and just finish this up. And we want to update the full name and the bio. Okay, now I want the newly generated or the newly updated information to be returned. So I'll set new to be true. So response JSON should return the edited user, and I'll have a status of 200 success. I hope that makes sense. So I think that's it. Now let's go ahead and actually have the authentication middleware, else it is going to give errors because this as at now does not exist. So in the middleware, let's have auth middleware.js. First of all, for each request, especially for the protected routes, okay, remember for each controller I have, some of them are protected except for the login and the register routes. Those are the only endpoints that are not protected, right? So for all the other ones which are protected, we will be sending a request, and then in the headers of the request, we are going to have the token that is being sent as a response when the user logs in. That is what we are going to send back to the server. Okay, so the server is going to get that back, and then with that we are going to verify here in the Auth middleware to make sure that token is actually valid and that user is actually logged in. Okay, so once we know the user is logged in, we are going to have that ID or the user's ID, and with that we are going to be able to perform a lot of tasks. All right, so let's go ahead and actually make this happen. Let's bring in JWT from JSON Web Token, and let's bring in our arrow. So HTTP arrow should be coming from. Let's go into our models and arrow model. So I'll say Auth Middleware should be asynchronous, and we need our request response and then next, because there's a middleware, right? And I'll say authorization should be equal to request dot headers dot authorization, or maybe the person did authorization with lowercase a, right? So whatever it is, I'm getting that authorization from the request headers, and I'm going to check if authorization starts with bearer. I'm going to check if that authorization starts with bearer. If so, then with that I'm going to get the token. So I'll say token should be equal to authorization dot split, and then I'll split that by a space. Okay, so basically whenever we are sending the request, this is how it's going to be. We are going to have bearer and then space the token, which is this gibberish that you see whenever you log in, right? So this right here, whenever we log in, you see we have a token. Yeah, so you have bearer in front of it right here, and then a space, and then this token, this gibberish follows. I hope that makes sense. So that's how we are getting the token. Make sure it's just one space, okay? And once you have the token, we are going to verify that using JWT. So JWT.verify, which is a method, and we pass in the token and then the secret that you used to encrypt the token. So process.env.jwt_secret, where is coming from the environment variables. Okay, although we are going to have a function and takes in an error and the info. So in case we had any errors, then this didn't work, and we are going to say return next new HTTP error. Basically, we are going to say unauthorized invalid token. We got the token all right, but the token is not valid, right? And the code is going to be 403, which is forbidden. Okay, and wait a minute, I could actually go ahead and check if we had the token as well. And with that, I will say, okay, right here. So we have an if statement here. So with that, I will say else return next new HTTP error. Come on. And say unauthorized. And this time it will be no token. And that will be 403 as well. Forbidden. So if everything goes well, then we need the ID of the user, because with that we can use it to perform a lot of things. We can use it to do a lot of things, right? And for instance, just like you have here for the edit user right here, we are using that request dot user should we go to info. So basically we are getting the information that was passed into the JWT when it was being it was being signed. Where's the login? Right here. So basically you are going to get this, okay, and that is it, right? So once we have that, yeah, we can go ahead and just do next, and I think that's it. Okay, and of course we should make sure we export this. So module, I hope you guys understand what I'm trying to explain here, right? Auth Middleware, and perfect. We have to come to the route, and wherever we want to protect, whatever controller that we want to protect, we are going to have the auth middleware in front of it. Okay, so basically you have to go through the auth middleware for it to be verified before you reach that controller. I hope that makes sense. So in this case, the edit user needs to come after the user runs through, or the user goes through the middleware, the auth middleware. I hope that makes sense. So that is it. Now we should be able to actually edit a user. Okay, we should be able to actually edit a user. Okay, so let me go ahead and actually try this out. I'm going to, of course, we need a real ID. So I'm not going to use my name. So I'm going to edit Jane. Yeah, so I'm going to get the ID of Jane. Yeah, I need to add a tool. That's edit user. So this should be, yeah, I should have the two. And this time we can't just send this. It's not going to work. Of course, let me just go ahead and show you. I'm going to have the full name, and the bio. Those are the two things we need, right? So I'll say Jane. So now that's the name of Jane Doe, right? Remember initially her name is Jane Doe, but now I'm just doing Jane. And the bio, I'll say this is Jane's bio. All right, so let's send this and see what happens. Boom, unauthorized, no token. Okay, so you have to make sure you are sending the request with the token before you can edit the user. Okay, so basically you have to be logged in before you can edit your own profile. I hope that makes sense. So here I'm going to click authorization and I'm going to select bearer token. I'll just paste the token, and now if I send this request, invalid token, really. Now let's see if we have any errors. Okay, and of course we are getting the token, so that should be the second element in the array. Okay, after the split, remember it's going to originally it's going to be like this. The bearer comes and then the token itself, right? And they have a space between them, and that's what we are splitting by. So in the array, after the split, we are getting the second index, which is 1. I hope that makes sense. Right, so we get the token like that, and I think that's it. Now I'm actually going to make this 401. Okay, unauthorized. You can make this 401 as well, but basically this this makes sense to be 403. Now guys, there is some kind of construction going on in my area, so the remaining video may be a little bit noisy. That's in the background. You may be hearing some construction noises, so bear with me, please. All right, so now let's go ahead and try to see if this actually works. So let's go ahead and have our changes and then send, and perfect. So now everything that we had in our body is actually updated. Okay, so Jane Doe's name is now Jane, and her bio is now, this is Jane's bio. I hope that makes sense. All right, we can of course try this one more time and then add some gibberish to her name and then send, and this actually works. I hope that makes sense. Perfect. So that is it for the edit. Now let's move on to the next thing. That will be okay. That will be for the follow and unfollow of a user. So now here in the follow and unfollow of a user, we want to first get the, let me check, that's from the route, we should be here. We want to get the ID of the person we are trying to follow or unfollow, right? So let's get the ID. So I'll say user to follow ID should be equal to request params ID. Okay, now we are going to check if the current logged in user's ID is the same as the ID from the params. If so, then we are basically going to return an error message. Okay, so we'll say if request.user.id, which is coming from the Auth middleware, by the way. So for this to also work, we have to go through the Auth middleware before we can follow or unfollow, right? Because we are using request user, which is coming from the Auth middleware, if you can remember right here. Okay, once we verify the Auth, user is what is being returned, right? Which has the ID of the user, of the current logged in user. I hope that makes sense. All right, so we are going to check if that is the same person as we are trying to follow. If so, then we are going to return a new HTTP error. So return next new HTTP error, and we are going to say you can't follow or unfollow yourself, right? But if that's not the case, then we are going to go ahead and we are going to get our information from the database. Okay, so I'll say current user. So me, that I'm logged in, I'm going to get my own information from the database. So I'll await user model and find by ID, and I'm going to pass in the request user ID. And the reason why I'm getting that from the database is because I want to look through my following to make sure I'm not already following this person. I hope that makes sense. And how am I going to do that? I'm just going to check if that person's ID is not in my following array. Remember, we have a following array. Okay, now let me actually go into my my database here so that you see. So for every user, you can see every user has following, okay, if it is an array. So I just want to check if the person I'm trying to follow is already in that array, right? So I'll say is following should be equal to current user, and I'm going to check if following includes the user to follow ID. If so, then I know that I'm already following this person, and so I'm going to follow. If not following, else unfollow. If already following, right? So I'll say if is following is false, right? If so, then I'll say updated user should be equal to await user model dot find by ID and update, and I'm going to pass in the user to follow ID, and we are going to push to their followers array. We're going to push the request user ID, which is my ID in this case. That's the logged in user's ID. I hope that makes sense. And we want the new information that is updated to be returned. So we are going to pass in a new of true, right? Now, right below that, we are going to go ahead and add to my following as well, right? So you say user model find by ID and update, and I'll pass in request user ID. It's going to be a push as well, following and user to follow ID. That is what I'm going to pass in here, right? So of course here too, I'm going to say new should be true. And here, of course, we are going to be doing file upload. Okay, so with that, as I said earlier in the demo, we will be needing Cloudinary to save our images or our files on the cloud, right? And after that, they are going to give us a secure URL that we can use instead of having every file in our project, which is not really ideal, else you're going to blow up your project with so many files, right? So what we are going to do is to go ahead and, of course, I have an account, but if you don't have an account, you can just create one for free. And once you have that, we are going to come here and click on the cog or the gear icon that you see on the bottom left. And we are going to have our API keys, our API secrets and the API name or cloud name or whatever it's called. So just click API keys here. And back in the code, we are going to have some things in the environment variable. And so right here, I'm going to have Cloudinary underscore cloud name. I'll have Cloudinary underscore API key. And lastly, I'll have Cloudinary underscore API secret. Okay. And we are going to get all these here. Okay, so there's the cloud name. You can just copy that and paste it. Don't use mine, of course, and probably by the end of this video this wouldn't be right. Okay, and you copy the API key as well and then paste that where you should. That's where the API key should be. And then lastly, you copy the API secret and then you paste that in as well. Okay, so I'm going to do mine off screen and we'll continue from there. I just finished everything and I closed that file, and so I'm going to go ahead and actually restart the server. And everything should be working perfectly, of course. Now in our utils folder here, I'm going to have a file called Cloudinary. Okay, that's where we are going to have our configuration, our Cloudinary configuration. And in here, I'm going to go ahead and bring in Cloudinary. So I'm going to bring in V2, that's version 2 of Cloudinary, and I'm actually going to rename that to be Cloudinary, and let's require that from Cloudinary. Remember, we installed Cloudinary initially, okay, at the beginning of the video or the project itself. And here we are going to do cloudinary.config, and it takes in an object, and we are going to pass in our cloud name, cloud underscore name, and that will be process.env.cloudinary cloud name. We need, let me just duplicate this twice. We need our API key, and that will be Cloudinary API key. We need the secret, API secret. So Cloudinary API secrets. Perfect. Now once we have that, we can go ahead and actually export it. Module exports Cloudinary. Right. So yeah, that's it. Okay, so we can also close this, and now we can actually go ahead to upload our avatar. For you to better understand this, I'm just going to send a JSON response just so you see what I'm going to be talking about. So I'm going to pass in the request files just so you understand what I'm trying to talk about. So let's come back to Postman, and we want to change an avatar. So I'll just go ahead and in the body, I'm going to use URL encoded, and I'm going to say avatar, And wait a minute. Oh, I'm actually going to use form data here, okay, because I want to send. So I'll say avatar. I want to send a file, so I'll choose file, and I'll select the file that I want to upload. So I'll just use any file here, and I'll send this. And wait a minute, what is happening? I should have request files, plural, request the files here. So I should send this request again, and we have this. Okay, so now you can see that we have an object, and in that object we have this avatar here, which is this that we have here. Okay, so with this avatar we have a file linked or connected to it. Now if I scroll all the way down, I'm just going to scroll all the way down here, you are going to see that we have the size of the file. We have, we have a lot of information here. Okay, way up top we had the name of the file as well, right? The name of the file was blog2.jpg. So we are basically going to make use of all these information. Okay, so let's come back to the code here, and I'm going to remove this response. And so I'm first going to check if there's not any file, right? So request files avatar. If not, then we are going to return next new HTTP error. And we are basically just going to say, what is wrong with these people? We are basically going to say, please choose an image, right? And we say 422. Okay, but if we already have an image or an avatar, then we are going to go ahead and get that from the request files. So request dot files. Okay, now let's check file size to make sure the file is not too big. So I'll say if avatar dot size is greater than 500,000 bits, which is 500 kilobytes. So if the file size is bigger than 500 kilobytes, and then we are going to return new HTTP error and say that profile picture too big should be less than 500 KB, right? You can pass in an error code if you want, but I think we can move on. And the next thing I want to do is to actually rename the file. Okay, remember we are going to be uploading them in this uploads file before we actually push them, or before we actually store them on Cloudinary, right? And we don't want to have any conflict here in this uploads file, so we have to make sure we change the name for each file that we upload. Right, so I'll say let file name, and I'll say file name. I can do everything in here. So let file name should be equal to avatar dot name, and I'll say let splitted file name be equal to the file name dot split, and I'll split by the dots. Okay, I'll split by the dots that we have in the file name. Remember, the file name was, I think, blog2.jpg. Sorry, that should be up top right here, blog2.jpg. So we are basically splitting it with this. Now some file names may have multiple dots, but we are still going to be able to extract some meaningful information from them, right? So we split by the dots, and we are going to get the new file name. Now I'll say let new file name be equal to the splitted file name, and I'll get the first element from the array, and I'm going to use UUID to actually generate some random, characters to make this more unique. So I'll say UUID, and I'm going to require that from UUID. Do I have that installed? I don't know. I think so. I think I have it installed. Okay, so I'll say UUID, instantiate that. It should give me a random string, and I'll have a dot, and then I'll have the extension, which should be the last part of the whole split. So even if we have multiple dots in the name, we are going to get the last part, which is going to be the extension of the file, right? So I'll say splitted file name, and I'll pass in splitted file name dot length and -1. So we should get the extension. Perfect. So now once we have that, actually we can go ahead and just do response.json new file name, just so you see what I'm talking about. Okay, so I'll go ahead and send this request one more time. UID is not a function. Okay, I have to import v4, right, from UUID. Okay, so v4, I'm getting that from UUID, or you can just do basically I was renaming the v4 to be UUID, right? But I can do import of the UUID and then v4 here, and this should actually work. So I'll save this, come back to Postman and send this, and as you can see, now we have a new file name for each file that we upload. Okay, you can see it starts with block 2, but then we have some random stuff in between, and then the file extension. I hope that makes sense. If I send this again, this should actually change. We have a different string in between them. So every file that we upload, some files are going to have the same names on different people's desktop. So if I upload a file called myname.jpg and you also upload your file called myname.jpg, then there's going to be a conflict, right? That is why we have to rename all the files that we upload. All right, so now let's proceed. So now that we have all these checks, we can actually go ahead to upload the file. Now, to help us with the upload, of course, we need to bring in file system and path, which is built in NodeJS. Okay, it's built into NodeJS. So path and then file system. Let's bring those two things in, and of course, we need Cloudinary as well. And we are going to bring in Cloudinary from the Cloudinary config. So let's go into our utils. I have to go up into the utils folder and then get Cloudinary. Perfect. All right, so I'm going to remove this response, and to upload we have to, I'm going to say avatar.mv, that's move, and I'm going to get the path. So path.join, and I'm going to use their name, and I'm going to add 2 dots. Basically, we are going up from this current file, okay, and we want to go into the uploads folder. That is where we want to move the file to. That is where we want to save the file, right? So let's go into the uploads folder and we add new file name. So that's the full path to for the saving of the file. We are going to have an asynchronous function here which takes in an error if there is any, and we will check if there is any error, and if that's the case, then we are going to return next new http error, and I'm going to pass in the error. Okay, now if we don't have any error, then the file was actually uploaded successfully into our uploads folder, and so we can go ahead and store image on Cloudinary or in Cloudinary. So results should be equal to await Cloudinary. And you can read more about Cloudinary, of course. I'm not just typing. I know this from reading the documentation, right? So you can go ahead and look through the documentation to know how to upload files using Cloudinary or how to store files on Cloudinary. Okay, so with this upload method, we are going to have path.join. Basically, we want to get the file, okay? We want to locate the file that we want to upload. So dir name, we go up from this file or from this current folder that we are in, and we are going into the uploads folder, and we add the new file name. And the second argument is an object. Basically, it's an object of options, and it takes in resource type, and I'm going to say image. We are trying to upload an image. So right after that, I'm going to check if there is no result or results is false. Okay, so if it is false, then that means we didn't get any secure URL. So I'm going to check if secure URL is false. If so, then we are going to return new HTTP error. So I'll return and say couldn't upload image to Cloudinary, right? And I'll have 422. Otherwise, then everything went well, okay? And we can go ahead and actually update the user with the new or the newly uploaded image. So we say updated user should be await user model dot find by ID and update. So request user ID, and then profile photo is what we are trying to update, and that will be the result secure URL, and I'm going to pass in new of true just so we get the newly updated information. Okay, so that is it, and we can go ahead and say response.json, and we'll pass in the updated user. You can add a status if you want a status of 200. It's perfect. So I think that is it. This should help us upload an image. Okay, so of course in our uploads we don't have any image. And by the way, for this to work smoothly, remember in our index we have this express file upload that we are using here, and so make sure you install express file upload, okay, because I'm going to test this out. Okay, I think this is the most recent image that I uploaded, and so let's go ahead and try uploading or changing a user's avatar. Okay, so of course this should pass through the Auth middleware before it actually can work. So we have to go through the Auth middleware before we get to the change avatar or change user avatar controller. So let me go ahead and actually log in as one of the users. In this case, I'll just log in as Jindo. I'll copy the token from here and change avatar. What is this? All right, so change avatar. I'm going to go ahead and select a different. First of all, let me paste the bearer token that I just copied. So I will delete the previous one and paste the new one. And for the body, I'm going to go ahead and select the image. Previously we had that default. Okay, now if I come back to the collection here, the users collection, and refresh, you can see that Jindo had this as the profile picture. Okay, so if we check that right now, you are going to see that image. That's it, right? So let's go ahead and upload a new image and see what happens. So I'm going to select this person and I'm going to hit send. Perfect. So that went well, and I'm going to click this to see the image. And now you can see that our image has been sent. And if I check, if I refresh, remember this ends with B3 blah 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 and then 3W. Okay, so that was the old profile picture, but now if I check, oh, this NS achiever, right? This NS achiever. So Gendo, and you can see we should have, of course, the newly uploaded file. And when we check our uploads folder, of course, we should have that in here as well. Perfect. So everything is working exactly as expected. And we are done with our user controller, guys. We are done with our user controller. So the next thing we want to do is to work on our posts. So we will start with our post model and then we'll continue to our post controllers. So I'm just going to go ahead and close the user model and the user controller, okay, and the auth middleware as well. We are going to need this routes file, so I'll just leave it.